The universe's petty revenge. My grandma told me this story, and I still can't believe how perfect it worked out. So back in the day, my grandpa was obsessed with having a son, like completely obsessed. This was the 1960 seconds in some tiny conservative town where everyone knew everyone's business. My grandma had 2 daughters with him, my mom and my Aunt Sarah, but apparently that wasn't good enough for grandpa because he wanted to carry on the family name or whatever. So when my Aunt Sarah was born and it was another girl, grandpa just lost it. He told my grandma she was defective. That's the actual word he used, defective. He divorced her 6 months later, and the whole town took his side. People would literally cross the street to avoid talking to my grandma. She couldn't even buy groceries without getting dirty looks. The pastor at their church actually told her that maybe God was punishing her for something. Can you imagine? Grandpa married this woman named Linda like 4 months after the divorce was final. Super quick, and everyone in town was so supportive, saying things like, finally Robert can have the son he deserves. Well, Linda had a baby girl 9 months later. My grandma heard about it through the grapevine, and she said she actually laughed out loud in the grocery store when someone told her. But grandpa wasn't giving up. He divorced Linda when the baby was 2 years old and married this younger woman named Beth. Beth had 2 babies, both girls. Then wife number 4, Karen, 3 kids with her, all girls. By this point, my grandma had moved to the next town over and remarried this really sweet guy named Frank. She was keeping track of all this drama through her sister, who still lived there. Wife number 5 was this woman in her 20s named Jessica. She had 1 daughter and then divorced grandpa immediately because she said he was getting weird and obsessive about the gender thing. So let me do the math for you. Grandpa had been married 5 times and had 11 daughters total, not a single son. But here's where it gets really good. My grandma and Frank had been trying to have a baby for a couple years. She was in her 40s by then, so it was kind of a long shot. But she got pregnant and had my Uncle Tommy, a perfectly healthy baby boy. Word got back to the old town real fast. My grandma's sister made sure everyone knew that the woman they'd all shunned for being defective had just given birth to a son. Suddenly, the whole town changed their tune. People started saying things like, Robert must have bad genetics, and those poor women he put through all that stress. The same pastor who told my grandma she was being punished by God started preaching about how children are a blessing regardless of gender. But the absolute best part happened when grandpa was like 68 years old. Turns out he'd been cheating on wife number 3 with this married neighbor lady. She had 3 sons and 1 daughter with her husband. Well, that 1 daughter, DNA test proved she was actually grandpa's kid. So this man spent 30 years divorcing women and destroying families because they couldn't give him a son, and his only biological son was the result of an affair. The neighbor lady's husband divorced her immediately. Everyone thought grandpa would finally get his wish and marry the mother of his son. Nope, she told him he was defective and she wouldn't marry him if he was the last man on earth. Now grandpa's paying child support for like 15 kids. Nobody in town will date him, and he lives alone in this tiny apartment above the hardware store. Meanwhile, my grandma lived happily with Frank until he passed away last year. Uncle Tommy's a doctor now and has 3 kids of his own. Sometimes karma takes a really long time, but when it hits perfectly.